Welcome to another episode of Hot Topics in Cosmetic Medicine. I'm once again joined by my good friend, Dr. Emily Levin. I will introduce her in just a second. Today, we're going to talk all about hot topics in cosmetic medicine and cosmetic surgery. We're going to talk about face BBLs. We're going to talk about what Cardi B has recently had done. We'll talk about internal bras and whether that's a new trend in plastic surgery, and a whole lot more. So let me go ahead and introduce my good friend, Dr. Emily Levin, once again to the podcast. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you. Nice to be here always.
So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, Dr. Emily has been on several times. She is a dermatologist, and we cover these hot topics. But if you are new to the podcast or you're new to the hot topics, let's get just a little bit of background information about you.
All right. Well, I am a dermatologist in private practice in the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan. I've been in practice for 24 years, and I do mostly general dermatology, skin cancer screenings, surgical dermatology, where I'm excising skin cancers, and a lot of cosmetic dermatology as well. I have a med spa, and I love that part of it.
So you also have a couple of associates, and do you have also physician extenders?
I do. I have two partners that work with me, two physician partners, and then I have one physician assistant, and then I have two estheticians that work in my med spa.
Cool. So if you are in the Metro Detroit area and you're looking for a great dermatologist, then Dr. Emily Levin is definitely the person to go see.
Thank you.
And I will be curbsiding her on this podcast today about my own skin issues. But before we do that, I'd like to ask you how it's been going for the past month or so. Anything new in your life or in the practice?
No, not much new. I mean, I think we talked last time. We just got word that we talked a little bit about this last time, but just some follow-up, the CoolSculpting machine. They're going to make my old version obsolete and stop selling stop being able to sell the transducers that we use. So that's a little frustrating unless we upgrade to the new machine. They did give us 2 years. So that's until 2027, I think, is when they said they're going to stop offering it. So we have a little time, but it's just frustrating that these laser companies do this, and I know I'm going to start looking to sell it on, well, we'll see. I don't know what I'm going to do yet.
Is the new CoolSculpting supposed to be different result-wise than the current one? Is it, or just a different device?
Faster. They say basically it's just faster, the CoolSculpting Elite, but they don't say that it does anything more effective than the old one. It just does it faster.
Do you notice any type of skin tightening with CoolSculpting?
I have not. That is something that it doesn't do. I know that some people say they may get a little bit of skin tightening from it, but really I do notice that it debulks the areas of fat, the unwanted fat that people want. I have not really noticed much skin tightening, but the skin doesn't really look looser after, you lose, because it's such a subtle, 20% of the fat with each treatment. So it's subtle enough that the skin sort of looks the same without looking looser or tighter, unfortunately.
And I know some doctors have claimed that if you do CoolSculpting and you do certain types of treatments afterwards, non-invasive treatments, that you may be able to increase the amount of fat that is reduced, like radiofrequency treatments, stuff like that. Is that something that you've looked at?
I have not. Yeah. Do you mean in like a liposuction way, like radiofrequency with liposuction?
I think that the idea, and this is something I haven't looked at in a while, and it could have just been doctors trying to talk up stuff. Is that, okay, so you do CoolSculpting, and so for all of you who are listening, CoolSculpting essentially freezes the fat, crystallizes the fat, and a certain amount of that fat essentially will die, and your body will kind of clear it by natural means. Basically, you pee and poop it out. I'm assuming you more poop it out because I can't imagine fat would be in the pee. So I guess you'd have to poop it out.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
You sweat it out. And so the idea is that there are, it's not going to, freezing the fat is not going to kill all the fat cells. Okay, it would be nice if it was that effective.
It'd be great.
But you kill off a certain percentage of them. And like if you have a burn and there's an area that's a definite burn, and then there's an area where the skin is healthy, there's this intermediate area, area where maybe the tissue has been damaged, but not quite to the point where it's going to die, essentially. Right. Yep. And so the idea that some doctors had with CoolSculpting specifically was that, okay, if you do CoolSculpting, you have a percentage of that fat that's going to die from it being frozen. But then there's that other percentage that's going to be damaged, but not damaged enough that it's going to die and then be cleared by the body. And if we hit it again with some other type of a thing, could you take those cells and actually put them over the edge? And that was my understanding of it.
I have not read that.
And I know some doctors who are doing some ancillary treatments claiming that you could reduce the fat more. I've never seen it proven, and it could just be an add-on to make more money for all I know.
Yeah.
But
it would be interesting to follow that, quite honestly. Yeah. Especially with my machine becoming obsolete soon.
There you go. So we talked before, this is kind of like the ongoing, if you've been listening, this is our ongoing saga of our devices. And mine did actually, I have an update this week, actually. So maybe 2 months ago, a month or two ago, I was able to sell my M-Sculpt device. I had bought that, I think, for $150,000 back in 2009. I think it was 2018 or 2019. And then within a year, they released M-Sculpt Neo, which is the new and improved version of M-Sculpt that contains radio frequency. And then our M-Sculpt treatments plummeted after that. And so now I think I got in 2019. Now you're looking at 5 years later, I sold it for $10,000. That was the most I could get out of it. It was $10,000. So that was a bit of a bummer, but it's off my hands. Really nice doctor. So the other device that I had is a device, it's an IPL. It's called E-Lite. It's made by a company, Syneron, that used to make things. They merged with a company called Candela, and they notified us about a year ago that the E-Lite would no longer be maintained by the company. They're not going to make replacement parts for it. So we got a in-mode IPL a couple years ago that's been a real workhorse for us. Mm-hmm. And we really kind of gradually stopped using the E-Lite anyway because the in-mode was so much better. And for the last 9 months, maybe, it's been just sitting in my storage area. So I put that on eBay, and I think so I bought that, I bought it a long time ago. I think maybe we're 2011, maybe 2009, something like that.
It's an old machine.
Yeah, it's old. And and I ended up selling it for about $4,000.
Oh, we got something out of it.
Something, yeah. And so I literally I put it in my car the day before yesterday, and yesterday I drove it to the UPS store. And it's not, it's a relatively narrow, it's a small device. And I estimated, I said, okay, I don't know, I guessed $300 to ship it, and then the heads and stuff, $600.
Wow.
Yeah, because it cost $200 just to make a custom box to fit the thing. And then it cost $400 to actually ship it.
Okay, so my one question is, who's buying these devices? If they're sort of, not popular for you anymore and getting absolutely sitting in a storage closet, who's buying them?
I looked up the buyer, and it's the owner, appears to be the owner of a med spa. So maybe, we had 3 heads to it, or 3 applicators. There was one for skin tightening, one for IPL, kind of spot reduction, and then we have one for hair removal. And the spot reduction, or the skin tightening we had used, and the spot reduction we used a lot. So it had a lot of pulses on it. But the hair removal had very few. We just didn't use it much for that. So it's possible that person could have bought this and saying, hey, maybe I'll use it as a backup. Yeah. And hey, I've actually had people ask me for the hair removal handpiece, because you can use that in other devices, I guess.
Okay.
And that is going to last for a long time. So, hey, you know what?
Ongoing saga of devices and how.
It's not that much money when you're considering you buy these devices for so much.
Right.
But it is also kind of depressing when you do buy it for so much. And especially if you don't, for us, the M-Sculpt, there's no way I made my money off that device. I lost a lot of money off that because the company basically screwed me.
Right.
I'm assuming with the CoolSculpting that has been probably worthwhile for you. It's just kind of disappointing that you got to make a decision on it.
Yeah, and we'll see. Maybe we'll buy a bunch of transducers. It still works fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's the catch, is that, these devices, they're coming out with new ones. As I think the general consumer knows, that there's constantly new devices out there, and what's the new best thing, doesn't mean the old things don't work anymore, because they still work great.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit of a marketing situation with the companies and these laser companies
Exactly.
They still work great.
Well, so the other thing that's been going on, before I get into these hot topics, is I'm going to curbside Dr. Levin, because it's very convenient sometimes when you have a dermatologist in your office who you're friends with.
Same with a plastic surgeon friend.
One of the things I have struggled with literally for the last maybe 12 years is a combination of perioral dermatitis and or rosacea.
Two of the most common things I see every day.
Perioral dermatitis. I did see a dermatologist before I saw you in the past, and I would be put on short doses of a low dose antibiotic. And the idea is that would help to tamp down the bacteria that could, or actually to tamp down overall inflammation is the idea. And that really did help with my perioral dermatitis. I've tried other things like topical steroids, which is not a good idea for that, changing diet, and all this other stuff. And nothing was helping that was natural. And so the dermatologist put me on low dose minocycline, which was really interesting because if you take 50 milligrams of minocycline a day, the worry is being on antibiotics, that's going to impact your microbiome, and that can be in general unhealthy for your system. But there was a study that found that within 48 hours, I believe, of going off of minocycline, the 50 milligrams, that your microbiome goes back to normal afterwards.
Yeah.
And
usually with rosacea or even perioral dermatitis, but rosacea, more importantly, we give doxycycline, which is a cousin of minocycline.
Yeah, exactly.
And at 50 milligrams or higher with doxycycline, it's antibiotic, it's antibacterial, so it'll kill bacteria. You have to worry about that long-term resistance. At 40 milligrams or lower, which is the brand name called Oracea, it's just anti-inflammatory. So you don't get any of those side effects. The microbiome stays the same, yet it tamps down or reduces that red inflammation of rosacea. So I often give that one really commonly, 40 milligrams.
I did look at Oracea, but my insurance wouldn't cover it.
Yeah, you can go on the generic. There's 20 milligram doxy, and you can just take 2 of them a day. It's the exact same thing. Oracea is just an extended release tablet, once a day, 40 milligrams. You get 20s and take 2 a day, separate them, or just take 2 at the same time. That's what I do for most of my patients.
So interestingly, I had rosacea issues this was a few years ago, and I actually saw you, and you put me on Sculptra, and I think an anti-inflammatory, and nothing improved it. And you know what I did that improved it? It was weird. I'd go on vacation and my rosacea would get better. Then I'd come home and my rosacea would get worse. And I would go to bed, and before going to bed, it wasn't so bad. And I wake up in the morning, it was worse. I changed my pillowcase. No, I changed my pillow because I change my pillowcase regularly, but I actually threw my pillow away and got a new one. Within a week, my rosacea was gone.
Amazing.
So I don't know if it was like fungus, because sometimes I'll shower before I go to bed, not like right before, but like in the evening, and sometimes I go to sleep with like wet head, and I thought, well, maybe it's like fungus or something, and so my rosacea has been acting up recently, and I get people who will go on social media and they're like, "Why are your cheeks so red?" And like, it's rosacea, and so I did is I changed my pillow, and it didn't help. And I have taken some time off. I've stayed in some hotels and stuff, and it hasn't gotten better. So it's not the pillow. I thought that was an easy fix.
I wish I could just tell all my patients, get a new pillow. I mean, the truth of the matter is rosacea is flared by, there are certain very common triggering factors like hot liquids, spicy foods, alcohol, caffeine, the sun, exercise, all those things. But there's also triggering factors that are unique to everybody. Yeah. So it may be, certainly it could be a bacteria or a fungus or an allergy to something in your environment. It could be a certain food that you're eating. So I always tell my patients, these are the common triggers, but there are some unique ones. You keep a food diary or a rosacea diary. And if you can certainly naturally eliminate something that's triggering it. But the bottom line is, you're always going to have it. It's just what's triggering it.
I can't figure out what's triggering it.
Yeah,
I mean,
and most
at
people
one point
can't.
It was bad pillow. Bad pillow is a trigger.
Bad pillow. But bad pillow. Now you're spending all this money on new pillows.
I can't figure it out. Yeah, this one.
So this is where maybe your rosacea is just getting worse. You just need to go out. We have a couple different topical treatment options that work much better than previous ones.
And I have found when I have been able to tamp this stuff down that it goes away for a long period of time. It's just something is flared up, and then if I can get it down, then it gets better. But and I'm all for natural approaches, but sometimes they just don't work. Now, you were telling me before we started this podcast that you have actually a compounded medication that has worked for your patients as well. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there's about 5 different topical prescriptions that can work for rosacea. And historically, they've always been extremely expensive. Most insurance companies don't cover. A lot of insurance companies now consider rosacea a cosmetic diagnosis, so not medically necessary to treat. So there are 5 different topicals, and we had a compounding pharmacy compound all 5 of them for us into a stable cream. Wow. My patients love it. They are thrilled with it. It's truly unbelievable. And we put them on that twice a day when they're flared, once a day as daily prevention, and my patients have been thrilled with it.
So what do you call it? Dr.
It's
Levin's
called
magic?
Complete Rosacea Gel. That's what it's called, the Complete Rosacea Gel. It's more of a cream, but we call it the Complete Rosacea Gel.
Wow.
And it works great.
All right, so if you have issues with rosacea, it's not going away. Changing your pillow doesn't make it better. Then
come see me for the Complete Rosacea Gel.
Or she's got partners as well that
Yes.
you can see, and they have access to the Complete
They're
Rosacea
wonderful,
Gel.
Dr. Brothers. They do, or my PA. She's
All
great.
right. So we're going to talk about some interesting things going on in cosmetic medicine today. The first one I thought was really interesting. And let me go ahead and read this article. I don't know what it's from. I didn't leave it, but it's an article that I read, and we'll go into it. So have you heard of the face BBL? If you're plugged into the world of plastic surgery, you've probably heard of the BBL. But did you know that there's now a face BBL? The term is that term face BBL is trademarked by plastic surgeon Dr. Benjamin Coughlin. The buzzy name describes fat transfers to the face, a cosmetic procedure that's long been used to boost volume and is experiencing a resurgence. Plastic surgeons say that in an effort to have work done that looks natural and understated, more people are turning to facial fat transfers, or face BBLs, over fillers, which are easy to overdo and require more maintenance. Coughlin says his face BBLs cost around $15,000, not counting other procedures a client may want done alongside them. For better or worse, face BBLs are also more permanent than fillers. The upside of this is that they're easier to maintain. The downside, however, is that they're harder to reverse. This can be problematic when a face BBL doesn't turn out as expected. My biggest hater comment is, "Oh, you're just taking advantage of women's insecurities," Coughlin says. And I always answer it, "No, I also take advantage of men's insecurities because it's just the reality." Have you heard of this term face BBL?
Well, this is interesting because, BBL can mean Brazilian butt lift, or broadband light, which is a laser that I use in my office. So dermatologists often use the term BBL as a laser device that we use for red and brown spots on the face and anti-aging. So when my patients say, I went on your website and I saw that you do BBL, they're like, wait a minute, you do all these face things, then you also do Brazilian butt lift?
They say that to you?
Yeah, they often will say that
funny.
to me. I'm like, no, it's the BBL for the face. So that's just a side comical note. But so I've heard of facial BBL, but the way that I am accustomed to it, which is a laser. That being said, I have not heard of the Brazilian butt lift BBL version of for the face. But as this article, alludes to, fat transfer in the face has been around for a long time. So it's almost like the guy's just renaming it. I don't do fat transfer.
Well, he trademarked it.
He trademarked it. Right. So I'm not quite, renaming his own.
Well, when you think about it, though, face BBL is face Brazilian butt lift.
Right.
That makes no sense.
No sense whatsoever.
It should be BFL,
Correct.
Brazilian facelift.
Facelift, correct.
But then that's an actual facelift, and this isn't. This is fat grafting.
But I mean, fat transfer's been around forever. I've never done. I'm curious if you do it, what your experience is. And I've seen people that have had it done and some complications and some great results, but I'm curious what your experience is with it.
Yeah, so I mean, a face BBL, or facial fat grafting, is a procedure I've been doing since my fellowship like 20 years ago. And essentially, we do some hand liposuction of fat from, let's say, the abdomen or the hips or the thighs, spin the fat down, remove the fat. I typically make a little incision each corner of the mouth, and then from there, I can inject it. I do it under a general anesthetic, so the patient's completely asleep. And I inject it into the cheeks, under the eyes, in the lips, nasolabial folds, really wherever they are lacking volume. Mm-hmm. And I tell my patients, the surgery itself is pretty easy. It takes about an hour, hour and a half, minimal pain afterwards, but you're puffy, you're swollen. Takes about 2 to 3 weeks to start looking good, okay, because you're puffy.
Yeah.
Anyway, depending on the location that we inject the fat, some of it may stay and a lot of it may go. So certain areas that we inject, like let's say the cheekbone areas, upwards of 30 to 50% of that fat I find will stay. Under the eyes, a little bit less. And in the lips, only about 10% stays in the lips. I think because the lips are have such a high metabolic rate, probably because they're moving all the time and stuff, only about 10% will stay. But because of that, you got to inject a lot of fat, even for a modest enhancement of the lips. And so for the lips, per lip, I will inject anywhere from 2 to 4 cc's, not often 4, usually 2 or 3 cc's into each lip. And when you inject filler, you'll inject maybe a syringe of filler total in both.
Total, which is 1 cc.
Which is 1 cc. Now you're adding that times 3 just in the upper lip. And you get the fact that you're doing it with the bigger cannula, so you're getting the swelling from it, and the lips start off like looking huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
Probably.
And so it's the way I use fat grafting now. Like when I started my practice 20 years ago, I honestly think I was one of the first plastic surgeons in the area to do fat grafting. Now everybody's doing it. But I was taught in my fellowship about it. I'd never done it before. I did my training at Michigan State in Grand Rapids. I fly out to LA. I work with a plastic surgeon out there who was one of the first surgeons doing fat grafting, and he did it on everybody. He was even fat grafting to people's noses and stuff. And so then I came back and I started doing it. I was one of the first people to do it, and now it's widespread. But that was also before we had fillers, good fillers. You know, at the time we weren't injecting filler for volume, as we were more just doing it for, you know, filling in lines and stuff.
Yeah.
And now that we have so many more fillers, I don't do fat grafting nearly as much as I used to.
Interesting.
But where I think it's useful is in somebody who really is very volume deficient. They are really gaunt. And to try to fill their face with fillers will take a lot.
Yeah.
And so for them, hey, you know what? We do fat grafting. We have as much fat as we need usually, and can really just help plump them out. But I will tell my patients, I will overcorrect you by about 20%, knowing that a good 30 to 50% will go away. So I'll overcorrect you a little bit. In the end, you're going to end up undercorrected, okay? Because you never want to overdo somebody.
Yep.
And so usually what happens is at 1 week, there's buyer's remorse. So like, oh my gosh, you put too much fat in my face. At 3 weeks, they go, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Is more of the fat going to go away? No. And then about 8 weeks, they go, oh, this is so much better than I started, but you should have put more fat in my face. So that's really the face BBL. It's just a funny name that this guy made for publicity, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I have nothing to compare it to because I do fillers, but I don't do fat grafting. But the results in some of those pictures were pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. But I get such great results with filler. And, you know, their whole thing in that article was that, you know, fillers are you can overcorrect with them and you can't always dissolve them. They stick around for 12 years. I have not had that experience at all with fillers. You know, I very rarely have I ever dissolved a filler before, you know. Anyway, so I just, you know, I think fat grafting has a role, but I think the fillers you can do such wonderful things with. But, you know, what a bonus that you can, like we always joke, you can take fat from one place and put it somewhere else. Like, what a bonus. I mean, the bonus of the liposuction is the best part about that. That's the most appealing to me.
I think with filler versus fat grafting, it's what I tell patients is if you're looking for a very precise, subtle change, fat grafting is not going to do that. Like when we inject fat, we just plump the whole area out, you know, and then you wait and see as the swelling comes down what it's going to look like.
Right.
So if you're very particular about how you want to look, do filler because you can get a very particular result.
Yep.
If, however, you're really volume deficient and you just need basically everything to be a bit plumped out as much as possible in some ways, then fat can work well. Or if you're having surgery doing something else, you know, then you can do it. But yeah, more and more I'm doing filler over fat because it's definitely much more predictable. And especially if somebody's looking for something that's very modest.
Yeah, predictability. So, that's a good one. I mean, that's a good reason to do.
All right, so you've got a couple of stories. Let's start with your first one.
Okay, we could do the.
It's up to you, whichever one you want to start.
Which one do I want to do? All right, well, I'm going to start with this cholesterol one because this one's pretty. The pictures were much more dramatic than I can even explain, but. Basically, this is an article that I found about a doctor had a Florida man patient that came to him with cholesterol oozing from his body, literally oozing from his body. And if you look at the pictures of his hands, you can see literally like these whitish yellow collections like oozing out of his pores. It's pretty dramatic, actually. Basically, but it says the headline of the article is "Man Shares Blood Test Results After 1 Year on a Carnivore Diet." And I know you and I have talked a lot about diets and skin, and you do a lot with, you know, how diets affect your skin and your body. A man from Tampa, Florida started leaking chunks of cholesterol from his skin after spending years gorging himself on fatty foods as part of a carnivore diet. The man, who was in his 40s, went to a hospital 3 weeks after he started seeing strange pale yellow nodules emerging from his palms, soles, and elbows. It turns out he was eating so much fatty food that it literally was seeping out of his skin. The man reportedly had started on a carnivore diet 8 months before, and that basically was only animal-based foods that eliminate all carbohydrates and instead just rely on all fats and bone marrow and dairy and fish, eggs, organ meat, things like that from animals. His dietary habits included a high intake of fats consisting of 6 to 9 pounds of cheese, sticks of butter, and additional fat incorporated into his daily hamburgers, doctors wrote in the case report. The man told doctors that this diet did cause him to lose weight, as well as experience increased energy and improved mental clarity, until he has a stroke, I'm sure. The doctors found that the man's cholesterol levels were over 1,000 milligrams per deciliter, which, for reference for everyone, over 200 milligrams is considered abnormal. So his was over 1,000.
Wow.
Basically, what these things are called in the skin, and this is a dermatology, they're either called xanthomas or xanthelasmas, where you get cholesterol deposits in your skin. And when I see these in my practice, oftentimes people come and they have little white deposits around their eyes. Sometimes if they have really high cholesterol, it can be all over their body. But the first thing I check is a cholesterol level. But this guy had such a high cholesterol level, didn't need to be checked because it was oozing out of his body everywhere. And usually these skin oozing of cholesterol are harmless, but obviously the high the high cholesterol and triglycerides that can ooze out of your skin is harmless, but the cholesterol levels circulating in the bloodstream can get stuck in your arteries. They can cause stroke. They can cause heart disease, etc. So I just found this article very interesting because the picture was incredibly dramatic, but we talk a lot about diet and people are always asking me about diet for skin, and I'm sure you the same. And, there's so many fad diets out there, but this is not one I would suggest because you may feel good and have energy, but you could stroke or have a heart attack and die very quickly with all that energy and cholesterol running around in your body. But it also just point out what I think is really important, that, with dermatology, what's so great about it, and I'm sure with plastic surgery as well, is the skin really is a window to the inside sometimes. And so this man didn't think he had any issues, and yet he sees cholesterol literally oozing out of his pores.
Yeah, a friend of mine calls the skin our magic mirror because it shows what's going on inside.
That. Yeah.
It's interesting. There are these diets like the carnivore diet. And so you read the article and you're like, well, if you see people who are fans of the carnivore diet, they're going to tell you, hey, I lost weight. I feel fantastic. I feel strong and all of that. And there is, I think, something to it. It's the same thing when you have people who go vegan. And for a while, they'll say, I've lost weight. I feel great and this and that. I attribute this to a couple of things. The first thing is when you go on a diet like that overall is pretty strict. Overall, you are dealing with eating whole foods. Then just removing a lot of that ultra processed junk is going to make you feel better.
Yep.
So somebody goes vegan, they're like, hey, I'm going to go vegan. We're going to get rid of burgers. I'm going to get rid of hot dogs and, get rid of a lot of this, stuff like ice cream and processed types of, bad foods. And just by the act of doing that, you feel better.
Yep.
Same with carnivore. Okay, so hey, I'm going to go carnivore, in which case they're going to be eating a lot of meat. Probably a lot of that meat's not going to be processed necessarily. They get rid of a lot of like the, stuff like the dessert type foods and all of that.
And the carbohydrates that are
those like unhealthy carbs, exactly. And they replace it with protein rich foods. And so they're going to get muscle buildup from it. They're going to feel stronger. But just like you see from this article, it's the way I think about it. It's like you see these professional wrestlers who are these like massive specimens and they're just built and they're jacked up. And then at the age of 55, they have heart attacks and they die. Exactly. And it's like, dang, like you see this guy who's physically so imposing and strong and yet they keel over and die in their early 50s. Yeah. Now, some of it has to do with steroids and drugs and stuff like that. But I think part of it has to do with the fact that their body is so anabolic. It's all just building up. And there has to be a catabolic part of the body too. It's like autophagy, where your body has to clean itself out every once in a while. And so I think part of what you're seeing in these situations when people feel great with some of these diets is that, is like with the carnivore diet, yes, you are feeling stronger and all of that, but where are you going to be 10 or 20 years afterwards? Yep. Are you going to then die of a heart attack? Are you going to, have other types of health problems that start coming out? And then I see that same on the flip side with vegans. I know a lot of people who've gone vegan, like, oh, I felt great for a while. And then gradually they start gaining weight. Gradually their skin starts getting worse. They start not feeling good because they're not getting enough protein for some of them. Mm-hmm. They're not getting that animal-based protein that really they may necessitate. And so I admire vegans because, most vegans I know are doing it for ethical reasons, and I'm all for, being kind to animals and everything. But I am not convinced that that's the best health move for everybody.
Agree.
Yeah. And I have friends of mine, your husband.
I was just going to say, my husband is vegan and I'm vegetarian. I haven't eaten meat in 15 years. I do eat a little bit of fish, so I'm sort of pescatarian, but I follow the vegan diet quite a bit, actually, just because my husband is the only one that cooks in our house. I'll give him a little props for that. And so I eat what he cooks, which is mostly vegan food. The key, I think, is the processed part of it, because a lot of people that go vegan are still eating processed foods, because it's plant-based that is more the important thing. And the whole foods, the plant-based, whether it's whole foods, animal-based or plant-based or whatever it is, it's the processed foods that I think are really what make people feel like crap. And so when people eliminate those things, they eliminate pop, they eliminate, soda, and they eliminate some of these snack foods, they feel so much better.
Exactly.
And that's a big part of these restrictive diets. Yeah. But you can't, with any diet, if you learn everything in moderation and how to substitute protein and different things, I think any diet can be good for your body as long as you are making sure that you're getting adequate amounts of the different food groups. Mm-hmm. And you can do it with any diet. You really can. But this is an extreme. That's extreme. Yeah. I mean, 6 sticks of butter a day, for God's sake.
And that's one of the benefits, so I have my diet in my Younger for Life book, and we have a 21-day jumpstart. And a big part of the 21-day jumpstart is cleaning up the diet. That's a huge part of it, So it's not like counting calories. It's not like, okay, you have to have this much protein, counting your macros or anything. It really, the first part of it is cleaning out your diet as far as getting rid of all the bad stuff. And then we add in a little bit of intermittent fasting so that we can get some of that catabolic part of it too. So it's not all just building up. You have to give your body that time to kind of clean itself out a little bit too. Yep. And in just 21 days, with what I have in the book, we've had so many people send messages and comment like, oh my gosh, I feel fantastic. And some people may think, oh, it's, he has this magic formula of like, this is how you're supposed to eat and it's going to make you feel great. I mean, I've studied it and everything, but a lot of it is just like getting rid of this bad stuff.
Yep.
And hey, I'll take credit for it. But in the end, it's saying, hey, let's cut these things out. Let's replace them with whole foods, with colorful fruits and vegetables, with healthy meats and all of that.
Yep.
And if you do that, you're going to feel better.
You are going to feel better.
Yeah. Okay. Next article here is plastic surgeons reveal smaller breasts are the latest cosmetic trend thanks to quote unquote internal bras. Top plastic surgeons are seeing more interest in natural looking smaller breasts, which is leading to an uptick in an innovative new surgery. Dr. Erman Desai, a board-certified plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills, California, I know him, real nice guy. He has seen patients in his boutique practice opting for an internal bra because of its ability to provide enhanced support and improve the long-term stability of the implants. The internal bra, typically made of surgical mesh or similar materials, helps to prevent implants from dropping or shifting over time, offering a more secure and natural shape. This added support can reduce the risk of complications such as implant displacement or bottoming out, ensuring the breasts maintain their position and contour, the plastic surgeon advised. The Harvard-educated surgeon explained that the internal bra can also provide a firmer, more youthful look and feel. An internal bra is a material placed to support breast tissue or an implant that's secured along the ribs and is sometimes done during a reduction. It also doesn't necessitate future adjustments or surgeries, which has made it a more popular option for women who don't want to go under the knife again in the future. There's also, and this is why I bring you into this, Dr. Emily, there's also a popular alternative that's non-surgical and promises minimal to no downtime that's all the rage with influencers in New York City. New York City's Cleavage Clinic, not Cleveland Clinic, it's Cleavage Clinic, offers a natural approach to achieve larger and lifted breasts using procedures including PRP, PRF, Easy Gel, Morpheus 8, and Sculptra. These procedures enhance or lift clients' breasts in 3 sessions for a fraction of the cost of invasive surgery. The clinic recently opened and is the first and only non-surgical breast enhancement medical facility, which has proven wildly popular with influencers who take their followers behind the scenes. The microneedling procedures provide a subtle lift, but still allows women to keep their smaller, perky breasts. The Cleavage Clinic. Okay, so once again,
so much to say.
They are combining PRP, PRF, Easy Gel, Morpheus 8, and Sculptra. Do you think that combination, in your opinion, okay, we're not giving medical advice, but in your opinion, will give larger and lifted breasts?
I do not, for the record. But what is Easy Gel?
So I
don't even know
looked
what
this up.
Easy Gel.
I've heard of Easy Gel.
Yeah, I don't even know what that one is.
It is a combination of PRF and albumin. So it's something where you take the albumin, you put it at a certain temperature, and you combine that with PRF, and they claim that it exerts a filling effect.
You inject it?
Yes.
Okay, so my 2 cents on this one. So we just, before we even started this podcast, as Tony asked me some advice, I asked him some advice about my neck because, microneedling, which is like number one,
So Morpheus 8 is part of it.
Is microneedling is part of it. So microneedling and Sculptra and what were some of the other ones?
PRP.
These are all things most things that I do in my office for face and neck and things like that. And you can only get so much lift out of those things. You can only get so much. And I always even say to people, I always tell people, I just want to lift. I say nothing I do lifts. Nothing. Surgery lifts. There is nothing that I can do from a dermatologic standpoint. I try to be very realistic. And those things may give you a little skin tightening. They all may give you a tiny bit of volume, a little bit of skin tightening, but you certainly are not going to get like a breast lift out of those things. Yes, you may get a little increased volume. You may get a little, but is that volume going to fall a little bit? I mean, without the structure behind it. So I am not doing injectables, Sculptra, any of those things on patients' chest or breast area. We do radio frequency microneedling, PRP, all those things, which gives you a little bit of for the décolleté and chest area, which gives you some skin tightening and a little bit of softening and improvement in this texture and tone and improves the discoloration. But no, I do not think that those things would give you enough of a lift.
What do you think about injecting Sculptra to enhance the breasts or the buttocks? So some people are doing it in the buttocks.
So I have 2 issues. I mean, separately from where I don't think it's going to work that well in either place, but you obviously have to worry about with women's breasts, with mammograms. I mean, then you're going to have a foreign substance in there that's really going to obscure what people can see on a mammogram. And that would be a personal concern of my own. For I wouldn't want it injected into that area. I wouldn't want anything injected into my breast, quite honestly, that could obscure if they could find breast cancer or not. So that's health is most important over cosmetics. So that's how I feel strongly about that. In terms of the butt, I know people that have tried doing Sculptra in the butt, dermatologists, and you get a minimal improvement. Again, a little bit of volume, but most people that are looking for a butt lift or a butt improvement, butt enhancement, need surgery. It's going to be such a subtle result. They're not going to be happy.
There are certain doctors that will post on social media, and I don't see it as much anymore. This was a few years ago, where they would have like these syringes. These are like 50 cc syringes, and they'll have like 20 of them on these shakers where they're shaking the syringes of Sculptra, and then they would inject it into people's butts. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me because Sculptra, I think, is a good filler for the face when you're looking at very modest volume enhancements and you need multiple treatments for it. But I mean, people would be injecting, I don't know how many vials of the Sculptra would take.
That's a lot of liquid even to go in your...
A lot, yeah. And then they'd have the shakers because, as you know, if you ever do Sculptra essentially, it's a powder that we mix with water. And the powder, it's not like my collagen where you mix it with hot water and it just disappears. This is like when you take, I don't know if do they still have high C nowadays?
I don't think they have high C, but I know
or like no.
It's a good analogy. Somewhat good analogy.
Tang. We used to drink Tang a lot growing up. So Tang is this like orange sugar drink that we used to think was decent for you. And you'd take a glass of water and you put a scoop of Tang in it and you mix it. Yep. And if you didn't keep mixing it, then the Tang would eventually fall out and it'd be all clustered at the bottom of your glass.
It does not dissolve.
Well, Sculptra does the same thing. Yeah. It's maddening to me, and I do a good amount of Sculptra, but it never completely just blends in and mixes with the water. I don't know if you have any, any magic to it, but for me, I find it clogs the needles so often, and it's frustrating.
Again, I get more improvement with fillers, the hyaluronic acid fillers, not because I use Sculptra as a filler, but I get more improvement with hyaluronic acid. They're easier to use. I get more precision. I'm good with just my hyaluronic acid filler, so I don't use Sculptra a ton anymore.
You don't? Yeah.
Mm-mm. No, I don't.
We use it here and there. I like it in the temples. In the temples, I think that's a good spot. But so the other thing that they mention in this, I agree with you. I'm not, to me, to do, it says 3 sessions of PRP, PRF, Easy Gel, Morpheus 8, and Sculptra. It cannot be cheap. You got to do 3 sessions of that. I mean, to achieve slightly larger and lifted breasts, it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
I agree, and I'm almost so curious. Like, there's part of me that wants to try it, or like some of these things on the chest or décolleté. I would not inject Sculptra, but I will say I'm happy to hear that smaller boobs are the trend. I read somewhere like yoga boobs are the trend now. People are saying I want yoga boobs, which are more fit and smaller and perky, and so I'm happy to hear that.
And this the interesting the internal bra. If you've ever heard of this and you're wondering what is an internal bra, essentially it's a mesh. It's absorbable mesh that we can put inside the breast, and the idea is that absorbable mesh will last several months. And as it sits there, it basically gets incorporated into the body and it creates scar tissue. And the idea is that scar tissue is going to be thicker than the breast tissue itself, and it can create kind of a holding up effect, essentially. And I did use the internal bra for a couple of years earlier when it was a bit newer. But what I would see in some patients is some outward signs of it, where they would have some unusual, as it would heal, sometimes I have unusual contours on the surface of the breasts. And so I stopped using them routinely because of that. But there's some doctors who love using it. They're very expensive. And unless I think you've got complications, then it's not something I would recommend just using offhand, because it is very expensive. And you just have to make sure that it's actually necessary for you to spend the money to have this thing put into your breast. I think if you've got a complication from an implant issue or something like that, then it definitely can make sense. But just to put it in everybody or something, that's not necessarily what I would recommend.
Tony, can you do a lift without the mesh in an implant? Can you just do it?
Oh, yeah.
Surgically suturing up or whatever.
The idea is that if you put mesh in with a lift, that is it going to help the lift last longer.
Got it.
And I did use it in a lot of lifts for a while, and I couldn't tell necessarily if it was making it last that much longer. But what I would see in a small percentage of patients is some surface irregularities from that mesh, and so I stopped using it for that. But yeah, so that's typically. There was a doctor, and they may still do it. They do what's called a laser bra. And essentially what they do is they use a laser to char the tissue of the breast. And it's the same idea, is you're creating this fibrous tissue that's less stretchy than soft, fatty breast tissue. And the idea is that it can act to stabilize the breast. But you're essentially just charring the tissue, which... I don't know. The idea of it just doesn't. I mean, I could take a cautery and I could do that too.
I will tell you, as a female, and listen, I know, breast implants and many women, but as a female worried about breast cancer, or I'm 50 years old, and I would those things all scare me. Oh, yeah. I would, So I think that's.
Well, we'll talk about fat grafting the breast at some point. That's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got one more that's kind of interesting.
This is just a fun one. This was just a fun one. I read that, we all see piercings and tattoos and things of all kinds of nature, but I read this article. I thought this was kind of fun. I'd love to hear what other people think of it. Cardi B shares a photo of her new butt crack piercing. She says, the article is called Do I Lie, which is what she said. Cardi B has never been afraid to push the envelope when it comes to style, and that's even more true now that she's debuted her latest body piercing. So she posted, I got my butt crack pierced, the rapper revealed in a post on January 27th. When another ex-user demanded a photo proof that the piercing in question had happened, Cardi B was happy to oblige. Do I lie? She quipped in a second post, which included a blurry photo of her backside, her butt crack, now decorated with 2 diamond studs right at the top of her butt crack, or we call the intragluteal cleft, officially. This is not the first time Cardi B has committed herself to unusual and potentially painful body modifications. In 2020, she unveiled a new back tattoo that took over 60 hours to complete. It says that her tattoo artist basically went with her all over the world in 10 different cities and completed this tattoo that goes from her buttocks down to the middle of her thighs. It was an awesome project and a crazy experience, the tattoo artist wrote. In 2023, Cardi showed off her new Monroe piercing. She called it a Marilyn Monroe piercing, which she got above her lip. Marilyn Monroe had a famous beauty mark above her lip. Cardi B came by. She went back to this piercing artist and said she wanted something cool and unique. And so she ended up getting her upper intergluteal cleft, i.e. butt crack, pierced with 2 large diamonds.
So you think it's a piercing, or is it it's an actual implant, I forgot what they're called, the piercings that have the blunt back, so it doesn't go through and through skin. It's like there's a... it's not like she's got a like a loop going.
No.
Yeah. So it's
a
more of
stud. It looks like a diamond stud,
Yeah.
2 of them actually. And I encourage anybody to look up the picture because it's very interesting. But 2 big diamond studs,
Yeah.
about an inch apart on the top of her butt crack. And with some piercings, whatever it is, they have a flat back that goes under the
Exactly.
skin and just prevents
So
it
it's
from
more
being
of
pulled
it's-
out.
Yeah, it's more of an implant. The
Feels more permanent
not
even than a piercing.
subdermal implant, but like more of just an implant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, a question is cleanliness issues, of course. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's back there, bacterial that, could get in there and cause a problem. What's the purpose? I mean, just decorative, of course. I mean, most piercings are decorative. And
Have you ever seen patients who've had like body
Never.
mod stuff like this and they've had complications that have come to see you?
Many.
really?
I've seen
Like,
many.
what do you
I've never
see?
seen butt crack piercing, but I have seen many piercings in other very interesting locations that make one, think, ooh, that must be painful. But yes, and many people come to see me, whether it's a basic ear piercing, nipple piercing, eyebrow piercing, nose piercing that are infected all the time, or that keloid.
really?
And keloid is a
Yeah.
thickened scar tissue.
Yeah.
And those are really hard to treat. Once you get, infection, you can treat usually pretty easily, but without complications. But keloids, which are those thick inflamed scars, your body's over making scar tissue, are harder to treat. And sometimes, you have to treat for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I've seen, because I do a lot of breast surgery, I have seen a lot of women who have pierced nipples, and some of them you see it really deforms the appearance of the nipple.
Yeah.
If you take the piercing out, I've seen some where the scar tissue around it really alters the appearance of the nipple significantly.
yeah. Both from look and probably from feel, which is, the scar tissue can
Potentially.
affect the nerve endings in an
Yeah.
area that has a lot of nerve endings anyway.
I would think that would be so painful to get done.
And then if you
Yeah.
have scar tissue that can make it, scar tissue is painful enough in a non-high sensitive area.
Well, there's a lot of guys who are getting piercings like down there.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know if you've ever seen any of those.
I have.
There's there are the
I've seen
terms
it
for
all.
them, like the double dido piercing, and there's what are some of these other names? Some of them you see on social media, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. Oh, was it Jacob's Ladder? I think is one of them. And it's like really. Don't look this up, my friends. You will regret
Do
it.
not look it up.
Don't look up Jacob's Ladder.
Not while you're eating.
Or I think it's double dido piercing, but don't look it up. Just know that this is something that if somebody says, hey, do you want one of those? Or do you want to see mine of those? You don't want to see it. You just do not.
Listen, to each their own. People
Yeah.
should do with their own bodies what they will. It's not hurting anybody else. Maybe it is.
I am
depending
impressed
on
that people can take that type of pain
Me too.
on purpose because, man, some of it is scary looking.
And then it's there all the time. So it's painful all the time. No, that was just
Yeah.
an interesting one I'd never seen. In all my years, I've been 24 years, I've been seeing patients naked.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a butt crack piercing in all the interesting piercings I've
maybe
seen.
you'll start seeing them more often.
Maybe it'll be a trend. We'll see.
So how can people learn more about Dr. Emily Levin?
Okay, so you can find me. I'm in the suburbs of Detroit. My practice is called Northwest Dermatology Group. Our website is www.nw-derm.com. We also have an Instagram and Facebook page, which on Instagram is northwestderm_covet med spa. You can find me in both of those places.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me always.
I hope that this was an entertaining and interesting episode for you. If you've been enjoying this podcast, if you could leave a rating or review on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, once again, it always helps us to spread the word. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Dr. Anthony Youn. This is a Dr. Youn Show. Remember, as always, to eat real food, use clean skincare, and auto-rejuvenate before you operate.